The blistering summer sun beat down on Olivia Evans as she struggled to keep pace with the other laundresses at Georgetown's busiest hotel. Her fingers, raw and red from lye soap and scalding water, fumbled with a stack of freshly pressed linens that threatened to topple from her arms. "Too slow again, Evans." The harsh voice of Foreman Willis Blackwell cut through the humid air of the washroom. His face, perpetually flushed with irritation, loomed over Olivia as she hurried to deposit the linens on the sorting table. "That's the third time today you've fallen behind schedule." "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell," Olivia replied, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. "It's just so hot today, and my hands, your back, your feet, always an excuse," Blackwell interrupted, his mustache quivering with disdain. "The Silver Peak Hotel demands efficiency, Miss Evans. The other girls manage just fine." Olivia glanced at the row of women hunched over steaming washtubs. None met her eye, though she caught Martha giving her a sympathetic glance before quickly looking away. They all feared Blackwell's wrath. Georgetown, Colorado had grown rapidly since silver was discovered in the nearby mountains in 1864. Now, in the summer of 1876, the mining town was booming, filled with fortune seekers, businessmen, and the laborers who served them. The Silver Peak Hotel catered to the wealthier visitors, and its reputation for pristine accommodations kept the laundry room operating from dawn until dusk. At 24, Olivia had been working at the hotel for nearly 3 months after arriving from Denver with little more than a small trunk of belongings and desperate hope for a fresh start. Her position at the Silver Peak wasn't ideal, but the steady wage kept a roof over her head and food on her table, meager as both might be. "I'll work faster, Mr. Blackwell," Olivia promised, reaching for another stack of linens. The foreman shook his head, his narrow eyes calculating. "No, Miss Evans, I don't believe you will." He pulled a small ledger from his vest pocket and made a show of flipping through its pages. "Your production is consistently lower than the other girls. I've been patient given your circumstances, but the hotel can't afford charity cases." Olivia's stomach knotted. "Please, Mr. Blackwell, I need this position. I can improve. You're finished here," he declared, snapping the ledger shut. "Collect your pay through yesterday and clear out your things. I've already got 3 girls waiting to take your spot who can work twice as fast without complaining about their delicate hands." The other laundresses kept their eyes fixed on their work, the rhythmic scrubbing of fabric against washboards suddenly louder in the tense silence. Olivia stood frozen, her mind racing. Without this job, she couldn't pay for her small rented room above the milliner's shop. Without lodging, she'd have nowhere to go, and the thought of returning to Denver was unthinkable. "Mr. Blackwell, please reconsider," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Clear out by noon," he said dismissively, already turning away. "And don't think about asking for a reference." 30 minutes later, Olivia stood on the wooden sidewalk outside the hotel, a small canvas bag containing her few possessions clutched in her trembling hands. The midday sun beat down mercilessly, and passers-by hurried about their business, paying no attention to the young woman whose world had just collapsed. She had exactly $2.17 to her name, not enough for a stagecoach ticket to anywhere, barely enough for a few days' food if she was careful. The room above the milliner's shop would need to be vacated by week's end if she couldn't pay the rent. Taking a deep breath, Olivia squared her shoulders and began walking toward the center of town. Georgetown was prosperous. Surely there would be other work. She would check the general store, the restaurants, perhaps even the assay office, anywhere that might need an extra pair of hands. 3 hours later, Olivia's hope had dimmed considerably. The general store had just hired a young man to stock shelves. The restaurants already had full staffs of waitresses. The assay office laughed outright at the suggestion they might hire a woman. Even the milliner, who had seemed sympathetic, had no need for an assistant. As the afternoon wore on, Olivia found herself at the edge of town near the livery stable, her feet aching and her spirit crushed. She sank onto a bench outside the blacksmith shop, setting her bag beside her. "You look like you've had a rough day, miss." Olivia looked up, startled by the deep voice. A tall man stood before her, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the sun. He stepped forward, allowing her to see his face tanned and weathered but kind, with striking blue eyes beneath the brim of a worn brown hat. He couldn't have been much older than 30. "I'm sorry," she said, rising quickly. "I didn't mean to loiter. I'll move along." "No need," the man said, removing his hat. His hair was dark with lighter streaks from the sun and a bit too long, as if he hadn't bothered with a barber in some time. "That bench is for sitting. I'm just wondering if you're all right. You seem—" He hesitated, desperate. Olivia suggested with a hollow laugh, his mouth curved into a slight smile. "I was going to say troubled. I'm Quinn Jameson, by the way. Most folks call me Quinn." "Olivia Evans," she replied, hesitating before extending her hand as she would to a business associate rather than offering it palm down as society might dictate for a social introduction. To her surprise, he shook it firmly, treating her gesture with respect. "You're looking for work," he said. It wasn't a question. Olivia nodded. "I was dismissed from my position at the Silver Peak Hotel this morning. I've tried everywhere in town, but—" She trailed off, unwilling to enumerate her failures. Quinn leaned against the hitching post, studying her thoughtfully. "Blackwell fired you." "That miserable old—" He caught himself. "Pardon my almost language. That man's notorious for working girls half to death for pitiful wages." "You know Mr. Blackwell?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Everyone who's been in Georgetown more than a month knows Blackwell," Quinn said with evident distaste. "He fired you for being too slow, I'd wager. That's his favorite complaint." Olivia's cheeks flushed. "My hands aren't as tough as the other girls. The lye soap. It makes them raw and I can't work as quickly." Quinn glanced down at her hands, and Olivia resisted the urge to hide them in her skirts. They were reddened and chapped, with small cracks across her knuckles. "I might have a proposition for you, Miss Evans," he said after a moment. "I run the Starlight Ranch about 5 miles outside of town. It's not a big operation, but it's growing. I've been looking for someone to help with the cooking and household matters. My previous housekeeper left to get married last month, and I've been making do, but—" He grimaced. "Let's just say my biscuits could break windows." Olivia stared at him, hardly daring to hope. "You're offering me a position as a housekeeper." "The pay would be $2 a day," Quinn continued. "Room and board included, of course. It's honest work, though not always easy. The house isn't fancy, but it's clean and solid." $2 a day, Olivia repeated, shocked. The hotel had paid her 75 cents for a 12-hour day. That's twice what I was earning at the Silver Peak." Quinn shrugged. "Fair wage for fair work. The ranch is isolated, though. Town visits would be weekly at most. If you're courting or have family here—" "I have no one," Olivia said quickly, then blushed at how desperate that sounded. "What I mean is, there's nothing keeping me in town. But Mr. Jameson, you don't know anything about me." "I could be a terrible cook or a thief, or are you?" he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "No, of course not." "Then we're square," Quinn said simply. "I'm a fair judge of character, Miss Evans. You need work, I need help. It's not complicated." He paused. "Unless you're uncomfortable with the arrangement. A single woman working for a bachelor. Some might consider it improper, though I assure you my intentions are honorable." Olivia hesitated only briefly. Propriety wouldn't put food in her stomach or a roof over her head. Besides, something about Quinn Jameson's direct gaze inspired trust. "When would I start?" she asked. A genuine smile spread across his face, transforming his rugged features. "Right now, if you're willing. I've got the wagon loaded with supplies and was heading back to the ranch. We can stop by your lodgings to collect anything you need." 20 minutes later, Olivia sat beside Quinn on the wagon bench, her expanded canvas bag and small trunk secured in the back among sacks of flour, coffee, and other provisions. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as they left Georgetown behind, following a well-worn trail into the foothills. "Have you been in Colorado long?" Quinn asked as the wagon rattled along. "Just over 3 months," Olivia replied, watching the spectacular mountain scenery unfold around them. "Before that, I was in Denver for a year, and before that—" She hesitated. "Missouri." Quinn seemed to sense her reluctance to elaborate. "I came west from Pennsylvania after the war," he offered instead. "Worked as a trail hand, then a foreman at the big mountain spread near Denver. Saved every penny until I could buy my own place." "You fought in the war?" Olivia asked. Quinn nodded, his expression somber. "Union cavalry. Enlisted at 19, came home at 23 feeling about 100 years old." He glanced at her. "That was 11 years ago now." They fell into comfortable conversation as the wagon climbed gradually higher into the foothills. Quinn explained that the Starlight Ranch ran about 200 head of cattle, with plans to expand to 500 within 3 years. He employed 3 cowboys full-time: Hank, Emmett, and Josiah, who lived in a bunkhouse near the main house. "They're good men," Quinn assured her. "Rough around the edges but respectful. They'll be glad to have decent meals again." As the wagon rounded a bend in the trail, the Starlight Ranch came into view in a small valley nestled between timbered slopes. A sturdy 2-story house of squared logs stood in the center, with a broad porch wrapping around 2 sides. Nearby were a barn, corral, bunkhouse, and several outbuildings. Beyond, lush pastures stretched to the tree line. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. Quinn's expression softened with evident pride. "It's not much compared to some spreads, but it's mine. Every board, every nail, every acre paid for free and clear." As they approached the house, Olivia noticed a man emerging from the barn, followed by a large black and white dog that bounded toward the wagon. "That's Hank," Quinn explained, "and the mutt is Bandit. Don't worry, he's friendly, just loud." The dog reached them first, barking excitedly until Quinn called him to order. "Bandit, settle. Good boy." He jumped down from the wagon and came around to offer Olivia his hand. "Welcome to Starlight, Miss Evans." Taking his hand, Olivia stepped down from the wagon, feeling an unexpected flutter in her chest as her eyes met Quinn's. For the first time since being fired that morning, she allowed herself to think that perhaps her luck had finally changed. "Miss Evans will be taking over as housekeeper," Quinn announced to Hank, a weathered man in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard. "Where are Emmett and Josiah?" "Checking the north pasture fence," Hank replied, tipping his hat to Olivia. "Storm last week knocked down a few sections." His eyes betrayed curiosity but no judgment as he nodded a greeting. "Madam, welcome to Starlight. You'll be a sight more pleasant to look at than the boss while we're eating breakfast." Quinn rolled his eyes. "Help me unload these supplies, then show Miss Evans to Mrs. Peterson's old room." As the men unloaded the wagon, Olivia took stock of her new surroundings. The mountain air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and sage. A gentle breeze rustled through the aspen trees that dotted the property. In the distance, she could hear the faint lowing of cattle. The house, when she entered it, was surprisingly spacious and well-built, if somewhat Spartan in its furnishings. The main floor consisted of a large kitchen with a massive cast iron stove, a dining area that could seat 8, and a comfortable sitting room with a stone fireplace. A staircase led to the second floor, where Hank showed her to a pleasant corner bedroom with windows facing east and south. "Mrs. Peterson fixed it up nice," he explained, setting her trunk down. Quinn, the boss, he's never been one for fancy trimmings, but he made sure the housekeeper had a proper room. The room was indeed comfortable, with a narrow but well-made bed, a washstand with basin and pitcher, a small dresser, and a braided rug covering part of the wooden floor. A hook on the back of the door held a faded quilt, and simple calico curtains framed the windows. "It's lovely," Olivia said sincerely. After her cramped room above the milliner's shop, this space felt positively luxurious. "Privy's out back," Hank continued, "but there's a chamber pot under the bed for nights. Bathhouse is the small building east of the house. We heat water on Saturdays for baths, but you're welcome to use it whenever you like. The boss is particular about everyone getting cleaned up before Sunday dinner." Once Hank left, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, still trying to process the dramatic change in her circumstances. This morning, she'd been a laundress facing destitution. Now she was housekeeper at a promising ranch, earning twice her previous wage. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Evans," Quinn's voice came through the door. "When you're settled, I thought you might want to see the kitchen and pantry. Get your bearings before supper." The kitchen tour revealed a well-stocked pantry and a cooking space that, while showing evidence of bachelor living, was fundamentally sound. Quinn had installed modern conveniences where possible, including a pump at the kitchen sink that brought water from the nearby well. "I usually handle breakfast and supper," Quinn explained as they inventoried the pantry supplies. "Hank manages lunch when the men come in from morning work. But with you here," he looked suddenly uncertain, "I don't want to overburden you on your first day." "I'm happy to start with breakfast tomorrow," Olivia assured him. "Though I should warn you, my cooking skills are adequate rather than exceptional," Quinn laughed. "After 3 weeks of my cooking and Hank's biscuits, adequate will seem like a feast from the Palmer House in Chicago." That evening, Quinn insisted on preparing a simple supper of salt pork, beans, and cornbread, which they shared with Hank at the kitchen table. The other cowboys returned just as they were finishing, introducing themselves to Olivia with awkward politeness, before serving themselves from the pot on the stove. Emmett was the youngest, barely 20, with a shock of red hair and freckles across his nose. Josiah, a tall, lean man with a quiet demeanor, nodded respectfully but said little. All 3 cowboys treated Quinn with evident respect, though there was an easy camaraderie among them that spoke of shared hardships and mutual trust. As darkness fell, Olivia retired to her room, bone-weary but strangely content. Through her window, she could see stars emerging in the vast Colorado sky, brighter and more numerous than they ever appeared in town. The distant howl of a coyote reminded her just how far she was from the bustling streets of Georgetown. But instead of feeling isolated, she felt oddly protected. Her hands still ached from the lye soap and hot water, but as she drifted toward sleep, Olivia realized that for the first time in months, she was looking forward to the dawn. The next few days established a rhythm that suited Olivia perfectly. She rose before dawn to prepare a hearty breakfast for Quinn and the cowboys: eggs, bacon or ham, biscuits or cornbread, and always strong coffee. The men would head out for morning work while she cleaned the kitchen, then turn to other household tasks: sweeping, dusting, laundry, mending. At midday, the men returned for a simple lunch: which Olivia gradually took over from Hank, who seemed relieved to relinquish cooking duties. Afternoons brought more housework, garden tending, and preparation for the evening meal, which was served promptly at 6 when the day's ranch work was done. By her fourth day at Starlight, Olivia had completely reorganized the kitchen, cleared out years of dust from neglected corners, and begun planning improvements to the small kitchen garden, where herbs and a few hardy vegetables grew. "This place hasn't been this clean since Mrs. Peterson left," Hank remarked at supper that evening, "and these biscuits don't break teeth." "They're still not as good as my mother's," Olivia admitted, "but I'm working on it." Quinn, seated at the head of the table, gave her a warm smile. "Everything's been excellent, Miss Evans. I think we made a fine bargain." That simple praise warmed Olivia more than it should have, and she found herself watching Quinn when he wasn't looking the way his hands moved confidently as he discussed plans with his men, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the quiet authority he carried without arrogance. As promised, on Saturday evening, the men heated water for baths. Olivia, given first priority, luxuriated in the simple bathhouse, soaking away a week's worth of work. The warm water eased the lingering soreness in her hands, which were already beginning to toughen slightly from her new duties. Sunday brought a welcome change of pace. After a late breakfast, the Cowboys rode into Georgetown for their weekly recreation, while Quinn insisted Olivia take the afternoon to rest. "Sundays for recuperation," he told her. "Ranch doesn't stop for the Sabbath entirely. Animals still need tending, but we keep it to essentials." With unexpected leisure time, Olivia explored the property more thoroughly, eventually finding a pleasant spot by a small stream that ran along the eastern edge of the ranch. Sitting on a fallen log, she removed her shoes and stockings to dangle her feet in the cool water, enjoying the simple pleasure. "Good spot for thinking." Olivia startled at Quinn's voice, quickly pulling her feet from the water. "Mr. Jameson, I didn't hear you approach." "Sorry to disturb you," he said, remaining a respectful distance away. "Just checking fence lines. Mind if I join you for a moment?" At her nod, he settled on the log beside her, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair. "How are you finding Starlight so far? Truthfully now." "Truthfully?" Olivia considered the question. "It's the most at peace I've felt in a very long time. The work is hard but satisfying, and everyone has been kind." She hesitated. "I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mr. Jameson." "Quinn," he corrected gently. "If we're going to be sharing a house, Mr. Jameson feels mighty formal." Olivia smiled. "Quinn, then, and you should call me Olivia." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the stream bubble over rocks and listening to birdsong from the nearby trees. "You don't talk much about your past," Quinn observed eventually. "Not that you need to," he added quickly. "Everyone's entitled to their privacy." Olivia studied the surface of the water, considering how much to reveal. "There's not much to tell that's pleasant," she finally said. "My parents died of fever when I was 16. My older brother took me in, but he—" She paused, old pain surfacing. "He wasn't a kind man, especially after he started drinking. When I was 20, I married a man partly to escape my brother's house." "Your husband?" Quinn asked carefully. Olivia shook her head. "Thomas wasn't much better in the end. He gambled away what little we had, then disappeared after a bad night at cards. Last I heard, he'd headed to California. That's when I came west myself, first to Denver, then Georgetown. A fresh start." Quinn was silent for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice gentle. "Some men don't deserve the women they have." "It was 3 years ago," Olivia replied, surprised at how easily she could speak of it now. "I've made my own way since then." "You have," Quinn agreed. "And done a fine job of it, from what I can see." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of kindred spirits. Quinn cleared his throat and looked away first, settling his hat back on his head. "I should finish checking those fence lines," he said, rising. "Supper at the usual time." Olivia nodded, watching as he walked away, his tall figure silhouetted against the afternoon sun. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to acknowledge a feeling she'd long suppressed: attraction. Quinn Jameson was not just her employer. He was a good man, and one she found increasingly difficult to view with professional detachment. As summer progressed toward autumn, life at Starlight settled into a comfortable routine. Olivia's cooking improved steadily, and the house took on a warmer, more welcoming atmosphere under her care. She planted late-season vegetables in the kitchen garden, hung curtains she'd sewn from fabric Quinn brought from town, and generally made the ranch house feel like a home. The Cowboys, initially awkward around a woman, gradually relaxed into treating her with casual respect. Emmett, in particular, seemed to view her as a combination of sister and mother, often lingering after meals to tell her about his day or ask advice about writing letters to a girl in Georgetown he'd met at church. Quinn remained courteous and friendly, but Olivia sensed he was deliberately maintaining a certain distance between them, as if he, too, felt the undercurrent of attraction and was determined to respect her position as his employee. Their conversations, while warm and increasingly personal, never crossed the invisible line of propriety he seemed to have drawn. In late September, as aspen leaves began turning gold on the mountainsides, Quinn announced at breakfast that he needed to ride into Georgetown for supplies and to discuss cattle sales with a buyer. "We'll be driving the herd to the railhead in Denver next month," he explained. "Need to finalize arrangements." He hesitated. "Olivia, would you like to come along? You haven't been to town since you arrived, and I thought you might want to purchase some personal items." Surprised but pleased by the invitation, Olivia agreed readily. An hour later, they set out in the wagon, the morning air crisp with autumn's promise. "The mountains are beautiful this time of year," Olivia remarked as they followed the winding trail toward Georgetown. "This is why I chose this location," Quinn replied, his eyes scanning the golden aspen groves and evergreen forests. "Some ranchers prefer the open plains, but I've always loved the mountains. They remind me that some things endure, no matter what humans do." "You're a philosopher, Quinn Jameson," Olivia teased gently. He laughed, a warm sound that made her heart skip. "Hardly that. Just a man who appreciates what God put on this earth." The journey to Georgetown took just over an hour. As they approached the town, Olivia felt a curious mixture of emotions. She had no fond memories of the place, yet it represented civilization in a way the isolated ranch did not. "I have several errands," Quinn said as they pulled up in front of the general store. "Why don't you get what you need and we can meet back here in 2 hours? We'll have lunch at the hotel before heading back." The mention of the hotel made Olivia stiffen slightly. "The Silver Peak," Quinn's eyes narrowed. "No, there's a new place, the Mountain View, on the east end of Main Street. Better food, better people." His tone made it clear he understood her reaction. With money Quinn had advanced her from her wages, Olivia purchased several items she'd been wanting: hair pins, a new comb, writing paper and ink, and a length of blue calico she thought might make a nice Sunday dress. As she walked along the boardwalk, she spotted Martha, one of the laundresses from the Silver Peak, emerging from the milliner's shop. "Olivia," Martha exclaimed, hurrying over. "We thought you'd left town. Are you well? You look different." "I've been working at a ranch outside of town," Olivia explained, self-consciously touching her hair, which was neatly arranged but not styled in the latest fashion. "As a housekeeper." Martha's eyes widened with curiosity. A ranch? Whose? Starlight Ranch. It belongs to Quinn Jameson. The handsome one with the blue eyes, Martha asked with a knowing smile. The girls used to watch for him when he'd come to town, never seemed interested in the saloon girls, that one. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. He's a good employer, she said carefully. How are things at the hotel? Martha rolled her eyes. Same as ever. Blackwell's a tyrant. Hired some poor girl from Idaho Springs who lasted all of 2 days before her hands were so raw she couldn't work. He fired her too. She glanced over Olivia's shoulder. Speaking of your employer. Olivia turned to see Quinn approaching, his expression unreadable as he nodded politely to Martha. Ready for lunch? He asked Olivia. I've finished my business with the cattle buyer. Yes, thank you, Olivia replied, saying a quick goodbye to Martha before falling into step beside Quinn. As they walked toward the Mountain View Hotel, Olivia noticed Martha wasn't the only one watching them. Several townspeople stared openly, and she heard whispers as they passed. People talk, Quinn said quietly, evidently noticing her discomfort. Small towns run on gossip, pay it no mind. The Mountain View's dining room was pleasant and uncrowded, with checkered tablecloths and vases of late-blooming wildflowers on each table. As they were seated, Olivia suddenly realized how this might appear to others, a single woman dining with her bachelor employer in town. Perhaps this wasn't the best idea, she murmured as the waiter left them with menus. People might get the wrong impression. Quinn's blue eyes met hers steadily. What impression would that be? That there's something improper between us, Olivia clarified, her cheeks flushing. Is there? Quinn asked, his voice low. The directness of his question caught her off guard. No, of course not. You've been a perfect gentleman. Then we have nothing to worry about, he said simply, though his eyes lingered on hers a moment longer than necessary. Besides, your reputation is worth more than town gossip. They ordered roast beef for Quinn, chicken and dumplings for Olivia, and conversation turned to ranch matters. Plans for the cattle drive, winter preparations, improvements Quinn wanted to make to the house before cold weather set in. As they were finishing their meal, the dining room door opened to admit a portly man with a florid face and a bushy mustache. Olivia's stomach clenched as she recognized Willis Blackwell, the hotel foreman who had fired her. Blackwell spotted them immediately, his small eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. With deliberate steps, he approached their table. Well, well, he drawled, if it isn't Miss Evans, I see you've landed on your feet. His gaze slid to Quinn, whom he assessed with obvious disdain. And Mr. Jameson, I didn't realize you were in the market for household help. The insinuation in his tone was unmistakable. Quinn's face hardened, but before he could respond, Olivia spoke up. Mr. Blackwell, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Yes, I've found an excellent position with fair compensation and reasonable working conditions. Quite a change from my previous employment. Blackwell's face darkened. Mind your tongue, girl. You were lucky to have work at all with your slowness. Quinn pushed back his chair and stood, his height forcing Blackwell to look up. Mr. Blackwell, you're interrupting our meal. I suggest you continue on your way. Or what, rancher? Blackwell sneered, though he took a small step backward. Or I'll remind you that I supply beef to every establishment in Georgetown except the Silver Peak, Quinn replied evenly. I might reconsider that arrangement with the other businesses if word got out about how you treat your employees. The threat, delivered without heat but with unmistakable intent, had its effect. Blackwell's face flushed deeper, but he merely harumphed before stalking away to a table on the far side of the dining room. Quinn resumed his seat, his expression apologetic. I'm sorry about that. The man's had a grudge against me since I refused to sell him beef at a discount last year. Thank you for defending me, Olivia said quietly. Quinn shook his head. You were defending yourself quite well. I just helped finish what you started. His eyes held admiration. You've changed since you came to Starlight. Found your backbone. Olivia considered this. It was true that she felt stronger, more confident than she had in years. Working at the ranch, being treated with respect, having her contributions valued, it had all helped heal something broken inside her. I suppose I have, she agreed. They finished their meal in companionable silence. As they left the dining room, Quinn placed his hand lightly at the small of her back, a gentlemanly gesture, but one that sent warmth spreading through Olivia's body. The ride back to Starlight was quiet, both of them lost in thought as the wagon rattled along the familiar trail. The encounter with Blackwell had stirred up uncomfortable memories for Olivia, but it had also clarified something important. She was no longer the desperate, defeated woman who had sat on that bench outside the blacksmith's 2 months ago. As the ranch came into view, golden in the late afternoon light, Olivia felt a surge of emotion she couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't until Quinn helped her down from the wagon, his strong hands at her waist and his eyes meeting hers with unguarded warmth, that she recognized it. It was the feeling of coming home. October brought cattle roundup, the busiest time of year at Starlight Ranch. Quinn and the Cowboys worked from dawn until dusk, gathering the herd from summer pastures, separating out animals to keep for breeding, and preparing the rest for the drive to Denver. Olivia rose earlier than usual during this period, making sure the men had hot breakfasts before first light and substantial suppers when they returned exhausted at day's end. She packed lunches they could carry with them, baked extra bread and pies, and generally tried to make their grueling work a little easier through good food and a comfortable home to return to. The night before the cattle drive was scheduled to begin, Olivia prepared a special meal. Venison steaks from a deer Josiah had shot the previous week, potatoes fried with onions, fresh bread, and apple pie made from fruit Quinn had brought from town. "This is a feast fit for a king," Emmett declared as they gathered around the table. "Miss Olivia, you're an angel." "Just showing my appreciation for all your hard work," Olivia replied, pleased by their evident enjoyment. "You men have a long journey ahead." Quinn, seated at the head of the table, raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To the best crew in Colorado and the finest housekeeper west of the Mississippi." The Cowboys cheered, and Olivia blushed at the praise. As they ate, the men discussed the upcoming drive 3 days to Denver if the weather held, with Hank, Emmett, and Josiah handling the cattle while Quinn rode ahead to finalize the sale. "I'll be back within a week," Quinn explained, his eyes meeting Olivia's. "Will you be all right here alone?" "Of course," she assured him, though the prospect of a week at the isolated ranch without Quinn's reassuring presence made her slightly anxious. "Bandit and I will keep each other company." After supper, the Cowboys retired early to the bunkhouse, knowing they faced a long day tomorrow. Quinn lingered in the kitchen as Olivia washed the dishes. "I've left the rifle in my bedroom," he told her, leaning against the doorframe. "Do you know how to use it?" Olivia nodded. "My father taught me the basics, though I haven't fired one in years." "It's loaded and ready," Quinn said. "I don't anticipate any trouble, but being prepared never hurt. The Ute are peaceful these days, and most travelers stick to the main trails, but just in case." "I'll be fine," Olivia repeated, touched by his concern. "Truly." Quinn studied her for a long moment, as if memorizing her features. "Olivia, when I return from Denver, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." Her heart quickened at his serious tone. "Is something wrong?" "No," he said quickly. "Nothing's wrong, it's just a matter I've been considering for some time." Before she could ask for clarification, He straightened and wished her good night, leaving Olivia to wonder what important matter Quinn wanted to discuss. The cattle drive departed before dawn the next morning, with Olivia rising early to provide a hearty breakfast and packed lunches for the journey. Standing on the porch as the first light of day crept over the eastern mountains, she watched Quinn and his men move the lowing herd down the valley, dust rising in their wake. Quinn turned in his saddle at the bend in the trail, raising his hat in farewell. Olivia waved back, already feeling the emptiness of the ranch without him. The first day alone passed uneventfully. Olivia occupied herself with housework, tending the garden and harvesting the last of the season's vegetables before frost could claim them. Bandit proved an excellent companion, following her from task to task and alerting her with sharp barks when a deer ventured too close to the garden. On the second day, Olivia decided to tackle a project she'd been considering for weeks: cleaning and organizing Quinn's study. The small room off the main parlor contained his account books, correspondence, and personal items, and while not exactly messy, it could benefit from a woman's touch. With Bandit dozing at her feet, Olivia dusted shelves, arranged papers, and polished the scarred oak desk. As she straightened a stack of letters, a small daguerreotype in a silver frame caught her eye. It showed a young woman with dark hair and a serious expression, dressed in the fashion of a decade earlier. "So you had someone once," Olivia murmured, studying the image. She felt an unexpected pang of jealousy, followed immediately by shame. Quinn's past was his own, just as hers was hers. She carefully placed the frame in a prominent position on the desk and continued her work, but the woman's face stayed with her, raising questions she had no right to ask. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains, bringing driving rain and fierce wind that rattled the windows and sent tree branches scraping against the roof. Olivia built up the fire in the main hearth and settled in the parlor with some mending. Bandit curled at her feet. A particularly loud crash of thunder sent the dog to his feet, growling low in his throat. "It's just the storm," Olivia soothed, but Bandit continued growling, his attention fixed on the front door. A moment later, Olivia heard what had alarmed the dog: the sound of hooves in the yard, followed by heavy footsteps on the porch. Her heart raced as she remembered Quinn's rifle, upstairs in his bedroom too far away to reach quickly. A loud knock sounded at the door. Bandit barked sharply, positioning himself between Olivia and the entrance. "Hello, the house," a man's voice called, barely audible over the storm. "Anyone home? We're seeking shelter." Olivia hesitated, torn between caution and the unwritten Western law of hospitality during bad weather. "Who's there?" she called back. "Name's Garrett Wilson," the voice replied. "Got my partner Tom with me. We're drovers from the Triple Bar caught in this storm. Just need a roof till it passes, madam." Drovers were common enough in the area, and the Triple Bar was a legitimate ranch north of Georgetown. Still, Olivia approached the door warily, Bandit at her side. "I'm alone here except for the dog," she called through the door. "The owner and ranch hands are away." There was a pause. "Understood, madam. We'll be respectful. This storm's a mean one and our horses are spooked." Taking a deep breath, Olivia unbolted the door and opened it a crack. Two men stood on the porch, rain dripping from their slickers and hats. The taller one, presumably Garrett, had a weathered face with a neatly trimmed beard. His companion was younger, with a boyish face despite his soaked condition. "Evening, madam," Garrett said, touching the brim of his hat. "Mighty kind of you to open your door to strangers." Bandit continued to growl softly but without the alarm he'd shown earlier. "You can put your horses in the barn," Olivia said, making a quick decision. "There's stalls and hay available. Then you can come to the kitchen. I'll make coffee." The men nodded gratefully and returned to their mounts. Olivia quickly stoked the kitchen stove and put on the coffee pot, trying to calm her nerves. Quinn wouldn't approve of her letting strangers in, but turning them away in such weather seemed inhumane. 20 minutes later, the drovers sat at the kitchen table, steaming mugs before them and their wet outer garments hanging by the stove. They had introduced themselves properly, Garrett Wilson and Tom Parker, and explained they were returning from delivering a small herd to a ranch near Idaho Springs when the storm caught them off guard. "We're much obliged, miss." Garrett paused expectantly. "Evans," Olivia supplied. "Olivia Evans. I'm housekeeper for Mr. Jameson at Starlight Ranch." Tom glanced around the kitchen. "Nice place, clean." His appreciation seemed genuine, without any undertone that might have made Olivia uncomfortable. "How long have you worked for Jameson?" Garrett asked conversationally, warming his hands around his mug. "Since July," Olivia replied, keeping her answers brief. "He and his men are driving cattle to Denver. They'll return within the week." Garrett nodded. "We've crossed paths with Jameson a time or two. Keeps to himself mostly, but has a good reputation. Fair in his dealings." The conversation continued pleasantly as the men drank their coffee. Olivia, initially tense, gradually relaxed as it became clear they were indeed simply travelers caught in bad weather. She offered them cold meat and bread from the larder, which they accepted gratefully. "Storm's easing," Tom observed after they'd eaten, cocking his head toward the window. The thunder had indeed grown more distant, and the rain had slackened to a steady patter rather than the earlier downpour. "You're welcome to sleep in the bunkhouse tonight," Olivia offered, knowing it was what Quinn would have done. "It's empty with the men gone, and there's clean bedding." The drovers exchanged glances. "That's mighty generous," Garrett said, "but we should press on if the weather's breaking. We're expected back at Triple Bar tomorrow." To Olivia's relief, the men soon departed, thanking her profusely for the hospitality. As their hoofbeats faded into the night, she bolted the door securely behind them and let out a long breath. Bandit nudged her hand with his nose, as if to say she'd handled the situation well. The remainder of the week passed without incident. Olivia kept busy with household tasks, read books from Quinn's small library, and even practiced with his rifle, firing at targets set up against the hillside behind the house. By the time 6 days had passed since the cattle drive's departure, she was eagerly anticipating Quinn's return. On the morning of the 7th day, Olivia rose early and prepared a special breakfast, hoping Quinn might arrive in time to enjoy it. When he hadn't appeared by mid-morning, she turned her attention to baking bread and apple pies, filling the house with delicious aromas. It was mid-afternoon when Bandit's excited barking alerted her to a rider approaching. Wiping flour from her hands, Olivia hurried to the front porch, her heart lifting at the sight of Quinn's familiar figure on horseback. He dismounted smoothly and led his horse toward the barn, spotting Olivia on the porch and raising his hand in greeting. She resisted the urge to run to him, instead waiting with what she hoped was dignified pleasure as he secured his mount and approached the house. "Welcome home," she said, suddenly shy as he climbed the porch steps. Quinn's tired face broke into a warm smile. "That's a fine greeting," he replied, removing his hat. He looked weary but satisfied, the stubble on his jaw indicating several days without a razor. "How did you fare while we were gone?" "Very well," Olivia assured him. "Though it was quieter than I'm used to, the Cowboys, following with the wagon. They stopped in Georgetown to pick up supplies." Quinn inhaled deeply. "Something smells wonderful." "Fresh bread and apple pies," Olivia said. "Are you hungry? I can fix you something while you clean up." Quinn's eyes held hers for a long moment. "That would be perfect. It's good to be home, Olivia." The way he said her name with a warmth that suggested more than employer to employee made her pulse quicken. "It's good to have you back." "Quinn." While Quinn washed away the trail dust, Olivia prepared a substantial meal of cold roast beef, bread still warm from the oven, pickled vegetables, and strong coffee. He returned looking refreshed, his hair damp and his face clean-shaven. As they sat at the kitchen table, Quinn recounted the details of the cattle drive and the successful sale in Denver. "Got a better price than expected," he reported with satisfaction. "The beef market's strong right now with the railroad camps and mining operations needing steady supplies." "That's wonderful news," Olivia said sincerely. "All your hard work is paying off." Quinn nodded, his expression turning thoughtful. "It is, which brings me to what I mentioned before leaving the matter I wanted to discuss with you." Olivia's stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. "Yes." Setting aside his coffee cup, Quinn met her gaze directly. "Olivia, you've transformed Starlight in the months you've been here. Not just the house, but the entire feeling of the place. It was a ranch before, now it's becoming a home." "I've enjoyed making it so," she replied softly. "I've been thinking about the future," Quinn continued. "The ranch is growing. With the profits from this cattle sale, I can expand the herd significantly, maybe hire another hand or two. In time, Starlight could be one of the most prosperous ranches in the county." Olivia nodded, trying to discern where this was leading. Was he about to tell her he needed a more experienced housekeeper for his growing operation? The thought made her chest tighten painfully. "But success isn't much good without someone to share it with," Quinn said, his voice lowering. "I've lived alone since coming west, focused on building something worthwhile. Now that I find myself wanting more." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Olivia, I care for you, more than as an employer for his housekeeper. More than I've cared for anyone in a very long time." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Quinn, You don't need to answer now," he said quickly. "I know it might seem sudden, though I've been feeling this way since almost the beginning. I just wanted you to know where I stand. That my intentions are honorable, and that if you might someday consider a different arrangement between us, I would be the happiest man in Colorado." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes, surprising her. "I care for you too," she whispered. "Very much." Quinn's face softened with hope. "You do?" Olivia nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. Quinn rose from his chair and moved around the table, kneeling beside her and taking both her hands in his. "I'm not asking for promises yet," he said gently. "Just the chance to court you properly if you're willing. To see if what we both feel might grow into something lasting." "Yes," Olivia managed, her voice steadier now. "I would like that very much." Quinn's smile was radiant as he raised her hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The tender gesture, so different from the demanding touches she'd known from other men, made Olivia's heart swell with an emotion she'd almost forgotten could exist. Hope. The sound of hooves and wagon wheels in the yard broke the moment. Quinn reluctantly released her hands and stood as Bandit began barking enthusiastically. "That'll be the boys with the wagon," he said. "We should probably—" He gestured vaguely toward the door. Olivia nodded, composing herself. "Yes, they'll be hungry after the journey. I'll get supper started." As Quinn went to greet his returning cowboys, Olivia busied herself at the stove, her mind whirling with the implications of what had just transpired. Quinn Jameson wanted to court her properly, honorably, with genuine affection. After years of mistreatment and disappointment, the prospect seemed almost too good to be true. Yet as she heard the men's voices outside, familiar and reassuring, Olivia allowed herself to believe that perhaps this time, happiness might truly be within her grasp. The following weeks brought subtle but significant changes to life at Starlight Ranch. Quinn began courting Olivia with old-fashioned propriety riding beside her, when she gathered herbs in the meadow, reading aloud in the evenings by the fire, bringing her small gifts from his occasional trips to town. Their relationship, while deepening emotionally, remained proper, with Quinn never overstepping the bounds of respectful attention. The Cowboys, observant despite their rough exteriors, noticed the shift immediately. Hank nodded approvingly when Quinn helped Olivia onto her horse for a Sunday ride. Emmett grinned whenever he caught them in conversation that halted abruptly when he entered a room. Even taciturn Josiah seemed pleased, once remarking that the boss smiles more these days. As October gave way to November, preparations for winter occupied everyone at the ranch. Hay was stacked in the barn for cattle feed during snowstorms. Firewood was cut, split, and stacked against the house and outbuildings. The root cellar was filled with vegetables and preserved fruits. Quinn and Josiah hunted elk and deer, providing meat that Olivia and Hank smoked or salted for winter storage. On a crisp Saturday in mid-November, Quinn suggested a picnic in a sheltered valley about a mile from the ranch house. "The weather's holding fair," he pointed out, "and once the heavy snows come, we'll be housebound more often than not." Olivia prepared a basket with cold chicken, bread, cheese, and apple tarts while Quinn saddled their horses. They rode out under a brilliant blue sky, the mountains around them already dusted with early snow on their higher slopes. The spot Quinn had chosen was perfect, a small meadow protected from the wind by a stand of pines, with a view of distant peaks. They spread a blanket on the ground, and Quinn helped Olivia dismount with hands that lingered perhaps a moment longer than necessary at her waist. As they ate, conversation flowed easily between them, ranging from ranch matters to books they'd read, to childhood memories. Quinn spoke more openly than usual about his experiences in the war, the nightmares that had plagued him for years afterward, and his decision to seek peace in the western mountains. "The first night I slept under these stars," he said, gazing at the distant peaks, "was the first night in years I didn't wake up hearing cannon fire." Olivia reached for his hand, understanding how significant it was that he shared these painful memories with her. "And now, do you still have the dreams?" "Rarely," Quinn replied, his fingers interlacing with hers. "The mountains heal a man if he lets them, and having purpose helps building something, caring for the land and the animals, caring for others." His eyes met hers, and Olivia felt the familiar flutter in her chest that his gaze always evoked. "There's something I should tell you," she said hesitantly. "About my past, about Thomas." Quinn waited patiently as she gathered her thoughts. "I told you he gambled and abandoned me," Olivia continued. "That's true, but what I didn't say was that he was cruel, especially when he drank. His hands were quick to strike and his words cut deeper than any physical blow." Quinn's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. "When he disappeared, everyone assumed he'd run from his gambling debts, but part of me has always feared he might return someday, claiming his rights as my husband." She took a deep breath. "Last year, I received word from Missouri that Thomas had been killed in a dispute over cards in Sacramento. I'm a widow, Quinn, not a abandoned wife. I should have told you sooner." "Thank you for trusting me with the truth," Quinn said softly. "I'm sorry for what you endured, but not sorry the man is gone from this world. No one deserves such treatment, especially not someone as kind and gentle as you." Olivia blinked back tears at his understanding response. "There's one more thing you should know. The photograph in your study, the woman with dark hair, I saw it while cleaning. I wondered." Quinn's expression softened. "Rebecca, my wife." You were married? Olivia asked, surprised that he'd never mentioned this. Briefly, Quinn nodded. We married just before I enlisted. She died of typhoid while I was at the front, never even received my last 3 letters. His voice held old pain, long dulled by time but never completely healed. I keep her picture as a reminder of the life I once thought I'd have. I'm so sorry, Olivia whispered, understanding now why he had been so cautious, so careful with his heart. Quinn squeezed her hand gently. It was a lifetime ago. I grieved and then I learned to live again. Rebecca would have wanted that. He paused. Just as I suspect the better parts of Thomas would want you to find happiness. There weren't many better parts to Thomas, Olivia said wryly, but I take your meaning. Their eyes held, a current of understanding passing between them, 2 people who had suffered loss, who carried scars, but who had somehow found each other in this vast wilderness. Olivia, Quinn said, his voice deepening. May I kiss you? Her heart raced at the simple, honest question. Yes, she whispered. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to change her mind, then touched his lips to hers with exquisite gentleness. The kiss was brief but tender, a promise rather than a demand, and when he pulled back, Olivia felt breathless with emotion. I'm falling in love with you, Quinn said quietly. I think I have been since that first day I found you on the bench in town. And I with you, Olivia admitted, the words coming easily now that they'd been spoken aloud. Though I tried not to, knowing you were my employer. Quinn smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm hoping you might consider a promotion. Oh, she asked, returning his smile. To what position? Wife, he said simply. Partner. The woman who helps me build a legacy at Starlight. Though she had sensed this was coming, the actual proposal still took Olivia's breath away. Are you certain? We haven't known each other very long and I'm just a remarkable woman, Quinn interrupted firmly. Strong, kind, intelligent. The sort of woman a man would be lucky to build a life with. He paused. I don't expect an answer today. Take whatever time you need to be sure, but know that my heart is already decided. Olivia studied his face, the clear blue eyes that had never lied to her, the strong features that had become so dear, the expression of hopeful vulnerability that he showed to no one else. I don't need time, she said softly. My heart is decided too. Yes, Quinn Jameson, I will marry you. The joy that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, radiant, transformative, full of promise. This time when he kissed her, it was deeper, a sealing of the covenant they had just made. When they finally broke apart, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. I never thought I'd find this again, he murmured. Never thought I'd want to. Nor I, Olivia admitted. After Thomas, I believed that part of me was dead. We've both been given a second chance, Quinn said. I don't intend to waste it. As they packed up their picnic and prepared to ride back to the ranch, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. From the desperate young woman on that bench in Georgetown to the confident bride-to-be of a respected rancher, her journey had been unexpected but perfect in its way. Quinn helped her mount her horse, his hands strong and sure at her waist. As they rode side by side toward Starlight, toward home, Olivia reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought her here. If Blackwell hadn't fired her for being too slow with the laundry, if Quinn hadn't happened by at that exact moment, if she hadn't taken the risk of accepting his offer. So many chances for things to have gone differently. So many opportunities for the path to have diverged. Yet here they were, heading toward a future neither had imagined possible just a few months ago. The ranch came into view as they rounded a bend in the trail. In the slanting afternoon light, Starlight looked particularly beautiful, the house solid and welcoming, the outbuildings neat and well-maintained, the land stretching in every direction full of promise. Quinn reached across the space between them, offering his hand. Olivia took it, their fingers interlacing as they approached their home together. News of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch and into Georgetown. The Cowboys offered hearty congratulations, with Emmett declaring he'd known it all along and Hank admitting gruffly that the boss finally showed some sense. Josiah, a man of few words, simply clasped Quinn's shoulder and told him, "You chose well." In town, reactions were mixed. Some, like Martha from the hotel, expressed genuine pleasure. Others whispered behind fans and hands about the suspicious speed of the courtship and the impropriety of a housekeeper marrying her employer. Blackwell, when he heard the news, reportedly made a crude remark that earned him a bloody nose from Quinn when next they crossed paths. Was that really necessary? Olivia asked when Quinn returned from town with bruised knuckles and a terse explanation. Yes, Quinn replied simply. A man can't let certain comments about his future wife go unanswered. Olivia sighed but couldn't help feeling a warm glow at his protectiveness, so different from the controlling behavior she'd experienced with Thomas. Quinn respected her independence, but defended her honor. It was a balance she hadn't known could exist. They planned a December wedding, a simple ceremony at the small church in Georgetown followed by a celebration at Starlight for friends and neighbors. As the date approached, Olivia sewed a new dress from fine blue wool Quinn had ordered specially from Denver, with lace trim at the collar and cuffs. The night before the wedding, a heavy snow began falling, blanketing Starlight in pristine white. By morning, the trail to Georgetown was nearly impassable. We could postpone, Quinn suggested as they stood on the porch, surveying the transformed landscape. Wait for better weather. Olivia shook her head, determination in her eyes. I've waited my whole life to marry the right man. A little snow won't stop me now. Quinn's face broke into a grin. That's my girl. He turned toward the barn. I'll have the boys hitch the sleigh. The journey to Georgetown took twice as long as usual, with the horses laboring through snowdrifts and the men occasionally having to clear particularly deep sections of trail. Olivia, bundled in blankets in the sleigh beside Martha, who had come to help her prepare, marveled at the winter wonderland around them, pine boughs heavy with snow, icicles sparkling in the morning sun, the mountains majestic in their white mantles. Despite the weather, the small church was full when they arrived. Ranch families from throughout the area had made the effort to attend, along with townspeople who had come to respect Quinn and, more recently, Olivia. The ceremony was brief but moving, with Quinn's clear "I do" and Olivia's steady response forming a bond that both knew would endure through whatever challenges lay ahead. The celebration at Starlight afterward was joyous and boisterous. Hank had spent days preparing a feast with help from women from neighboring ranches. The furniture in the main room had been pushed aside to create space for dancing, with Emmett proving surprisingly skilled on the fiddle and Josiah keeping rhythm on a small drum. As evening fell, Quinn led Olivia in a waltz before their friends and neighbors. Moving smoothly in his arms, Olivia marveled at how right it felt to be their Mrs. Quinn Jameson, mistress of Starlight Ranch, wife to a man who looked at her as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever beheld. "Happy," Quinn murmured as they turned around the floor. "Completely," Olivia replied, her eyes shining. "And you, more than I ever thought possible," he said, his arm tightening slightly around her waist. Later, after the guests had departed, some to sleep in the bunkhouse due to the continuing snowfall, others braving the weather to return to their own homes, Quinn and Olivia stood alone in the main room of the house. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the simple furnishings that had become so familiar to both of them. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jameson," Quinn said softly, drawing her into his arms. Olivia rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I've been home since the day you found me on that bench," she replied. "I just didn't know it yet." Quinn's fingers gently tilted her chin upward, and as his lips met hers in a tender kiss, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found where she belonged. Winter passed in a blur of contentment for the newlyweds. Heavy snows often isolated Starlight from Georgetown, but the ranch was well prepared, with ample supplies and provisions to last until spring. Quinn and his men made daily trips to the pastures where the cattle were wintering, ensuring the animals had access to feed and water despite the harsh conditions. Olivia settled into her role as wife and ranch mistress with natural grace. Her days were still filled with cooking, cleaning, and household management. But now these tasks were performed not for wages but for the home and family she was building with Quinn. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, reading, talking, or simply enjoying each other's presence after the day's work was done. Their physical relationship, begun with wedding night tenderness, deepened into a passionate bond that still sometimes left Olivia breathless with wonder. Quinn was a considerate lover who took pleasure in her pleasure, helping her discover aspects of intimacy she'd never experienced in her brief, unhappy first marriage. As February's bitter cold gradually gave way to March's tentative thaw, Olivia began to suspect a new blessing was on its way. Her monthly courses, always regular, had failed to appear, and certain foods that she had previously enjoyed now turned her stomach. She waited until she was reasonably certain before sharing her suspicion with Quinn. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the snow-covered mountains in shades of pink and gold, she took his hand and placed it gently over her still flat abdomen. "I believe Starlight will have a new resident come autumn," she said softly, watching his face. Quinn's expression transformed from momentary confusion to dawning comprehension, then to pure joy. "A baby? You're certain?" "As certain as one can be without a doctor's confirmation," Olivia replied, her own happiness reflected in her eyes. "I've felt different these past weeks. Mother always said she knew she was carrying a child before any physical signs appeared." "A child," Quinn repeated, wonder in his voice. He pulled Olivia into a gentle embrace, pressing his face against her hair. "Our child." Olivia felt the wetness of tears against her cheek and realized they were his. "Are you pleased, then?" she asked, though his reaction had made the answer obvious. "Pleased doesn't begin to describe it," Quinn said, drawing back to look into her eyes. "Overjoyed, terrified, grateful beyond words." He placed his hand again on her stomach, as if already trying to connect with the tiny life growing within. "You've given me more happiness in these past months than I'd found in all the years before I met you, and now this miracle." "We've given each other happiness," Olivia corrected gently. "And we'll give this child the loving home neither of us had in our younger years." Quinn nodded, his expression solemn with the weight of the promise. "That we will, my love, that we will." The news of the coming baby brought added purpose to the spring preparations at Starlight. Quinn began planning an addition to the house, 2 new bedrooms, and an indoor washroom that would make life easier for Olivia and the child. The Cowboys, who had come to view Olivia as a combination of sister and mother figure, became even more protective, insisting on carrying heavy items and taking on tasks she would normally handle. "You're all treating me like I'm made of porcelain," Olivia complained good-naturedly one day as Emmett refused to let her carry a basket of eggs from the chicken coop. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, usually while continuing to work right up until the birth." "Not on my watch," Quinn said firmly from the doorway, where he'd overheard her remark. "And not with my child and wife." As her pregnancy progressed and her condition became visible, Olivia found herself the recipient of advice from every woman in the county. Martha, during a visit to Starlight, shared her sister's remedies for morning sickness. The wife of a neighboring rancher brought a tonic that supposedly ensured an easy delivery. Even the formidable Mrs. Prescott, wife of Georgetown's mayor, unbent enough to send a basket of baby linens with a note expressing her sincere felicitations on your expanding family. By late summer, with her confinement approaching, Olivia had transformed the small room adjacent to their bedroom into a nursery. Quinn had crafted a cradle from pine, its simple lines sanded to satin smoothness under his careful hands. Olivia lined it with soft blankets and positioned it near the window where morning light would filter through curtains she'd sewn from cheerful yellow fabric. "It's perfect," she declared as they stood together in the completed nursery. "All it needs now is its occupant." Quinn wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her rounded belly where their child often kicked energetically. "Just a few more weeks," he murmured, nuzzling her neck. "Are you nervous?" "A little," Olivia admitted. "But Mrs. Cooper from the Triple Bar Ranch has delivered dozens of babies, and she's promised to come when my time is near. Between her experience and your steady presence, I feel well supported." The baby, however, had plans of its own. 2 weeks before the expected date, in the middle of a stormy September night, Olivia woke to sharp pains and wetness soaking the bed. "Quinn," she gasped, gripping his arm. "The baby's coming. Now." Quinn was instantly alert, calming her with a steadiness that belied his own anxiety. "I'll send Josiah for Mrs. Cooper and fetch hot water," he said, helping her into a more comfortable position. "Everything will be fine, Olivia. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she finished with a strained smile. "So you've reminded me. Go quickly." The next 12 hours were a blur of pain, effort, and determination. Mrs. Cooper arrived within 2 hours, her experienced hands examining Olivia and declaring everything to be progressing normally, despite the early timing. Quinn refused to leave Olivia's side, supporting her through each contraction, wiping her brow and murmuring encouragement when her strength seemed to flag. "I can't do this anymore," Olivia gasped after particularly intense pains. "It's too much." "You can," Quinn insisted, his voice firm but loving. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Olivia Jameson. Our child is counting on that strength. I'm counting on it." Drawing on reserves she didn't know she possessed, Olivia continued to work with each contraction. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the bedroom with golden light, a new sound joined the symphony of the awakening day, the lusty cry of a newborn baby. "A boy," Mrs. Cooper announced triumphantly, holding up the squalling infant. "A fine, strong boy." Quinn's face, drawn with concern throughout the night, broke into a smile of pure wonder. "A son," he breathed, looking from the baby to Olivia's exhausted but radiant face. "We have a son." After Mrs. Cooper had cleaned and swaddled the infant, she placed him in Olivia's waiting arms. "He's perfect," Olivia whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes, marveling at the miniature features that somehow combined her own and Quinn's. Quinn sat beside them on the bed, one arm around Olivia's shoulders, the other hand gently touching his son's downy head. "What shall we name him?" he asked. "We never did decide." Olivia studied the baby's face thoughtfully. "What about Samuel, after your father?" Quinn's eyes shone with emotion. "Samuel," he repeated. "Samuel Evans Jameson. It's a strong name." "For a strong boy," Olivia agreed, feeling the perfect weight of her son in her arms, the physical manifestation of the love she and Quinn shared. As Mrs. Cooper discreetly left the room to give the new family privacy, Quinn leaned down to kiss Olivia's forehead, then his son's. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "For Samuel, for everything you've given me." Olivia looked up at her husband, this good man who had hired her at twice her previous wage when she was desperate, who had courted her with respect and married her with love, who had held her hand through the night as she brought their child into the world. "We've given each other everything," she corrected gently. "And now we've created something even more precious." Quinn nodded, too overcome for words. Outside the window, Starlight Ranch was coming to life with the new day. Inside, cradled in their love, Samuel Jameson slept peacefully, unaware of the journey that had brought his parents together or the future that awaited him as heir to the legacy they were building. 5 years later, the spring sunshine bathed Starlight Ranch in golden light as Olivia stood on the porch, watching Quinn lead 4-year-old Samuel on a gentle pony around the corral. The boy's delighted laughter carried across the yard, mingling with the gurgling of 2-year-old Rebecca, who was attempting to build a tower of wooden blocks at Olivia's feet. "Higher, Mama," Rebecca demanded as the tower toppled for the 3rd time. "Make it higher." "You need a stronger foundation, sweetheart," Olivia explained, kneeling beside her daughter despite the awkwardness of her current condition. At 7 months pregnant with their 3rd child, simple movements were becoming increasingly challenging. "See how the bottom blocks aren't lined up properly?" Rebecca's face, so like Quinn's with those striking blue eyes, scrunched in concentration as she rearranged the blocks according to her mother's suggestion. This time, the tower stood more steadily as she carefully added each piece. From the corral, Quinn called, "Olivia, look at this cowboy, sitting tall in the saddle like he was born to it." Samuel, perched proudly on his pony with Quinn holding the lead rope, waved excitedly. "Look, Mama, I'm riding by myself." "I see you, darling. You're doing wonderfully." Olivia called back, her heart swelling with pride and love for her little family. Starlight Ranch had prospered in the 5 years since she and Quinn had married. The cattle herd now numbered over 600 head, making it one of the largest operations in the county. The original house had been expanded twice, first for the children's rooms, then for a larger kitchen and formal dining room that could accommodate the growing number of guests who visited regularly. Quinn had hired 3 additional hands to help manage the expanding ranch, and last year had promoted Hank to foreman, allowing Quinn more time to focus on business dealings and his family. The loyal cowboys who had witnessed the beginning of Quinn and Olivia's relationship remained, with Emmett now married to Martha's niece and living in a small cabin on the property. As promised on that long-ago day when he'd hired her at twice her previous wage, Quinn had always ensured that Olivia was an equal partner in their enterprise. Major decisions about the ranch were made together, with Quinn valuing her practical intelligence and intuition. Her kitchen garden had expanded into a productive vegetable plot that supplied not only their table but also provided extra produce. They sold in Georgetown during summer months. The town itself had changed too. The silver boom had leveled off, but Georgetown had established itself as a permanent settlement rather than a temporary mining camp. Willis Blackwell had eventually lost his position at the Silver Peak Hotel after numerous complaints about his treatment of staff, and was rumored to have left Colorado altogether. The new management had attempted to hire Olivia as head housekeeper at 3 times her old wage, an offer she had declined with private satisfaction. "Mama, watch me," Samuel called again as Quinn allowed the pony to break into a gentle trot. "Careful, Quinn," Olivia cautioned, though she trusted her husband implicitly with their children's safety. Quinn winked at her, his face now sporting a neatly trimmed beard that had only enhanced his handsome features as he entered his 40s. "He's a natural, just like his mother." Olivia laughed. "I hardly consider myself a natural horsewoman." "You've become one," Quinn insisted, "just as you've become a natural at everything you've turned your hand to." It was true that Olivia had developed skills she'd never imagined possessing before coming to Starlight. She could now ride competently, handle a rifle accurately, manage ranch accounts, oversee a household staff that included a young maid and cook's helper, and still find time to nurture her children and maintain the deep connection with her husband that had only strengthened over the years. The sound of an approaching wagon drew their attention. Josiah, returning from a supply run to Georgetown, guided the team into the yard. "Mail," he called, holding up a bundle of letters. "And that fabric you ordered, Mrs. Jameson." "Thank you, Josiah," Olivia replied, carefully rising from her position beside Rebecca. "Any news from town? Railroads coming through for certain," Josiah reported, jumping down from the wagon. "Construction starts next spring. Folks are already speculating on how it'll change things." Quinn led Samuel's pony back to the hitching post, lifting the boy down with a proud pat on the shoulder. "Change is inevitable," he remarked, taking the mail from Josiah. "The important thing is making sure it's change for the better." Later that evening, after the children were tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Quinn and Olivia sat together on the porch swing, watching twilight settle over the mountains. His arm rested comfortably around her shoulders, her head leaned against him, their hands intertwined over the rounded evidence of their growing family. 5 years, Quinn mused, his voice soft in the gathering dusk. "Sometimes it feels like we've been together forever. Other times, it seems like just yesterday I found you sitting on that bench in town." "The best yesterday of my life," Olivia murmured, snuggling closer despite the summer warmth, "though each day since has been wonderful in its own way." Quinn's hand gently caressed her stomach, feeling the baby shift beneath his touch. "Any regrets about any of it?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "Only that we didn't find each other sooner," she finally answered. "But then, perhaps we wouldn't have been ready for each other. We both needed to walk some difficult paths to appreciate the easier road we found together." Quinn nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Wise as always, Mrs. Jameson," he paused. "I've been thinking about Blackwell lately." "Whatever for?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I realized I never properly thanked him," Quinn replied with a hint of irony in his voice. "If he hadn't fired you for being too slow, we might never have met. His cruelty led to my greatest happiness." Olivia laughed softly. "I'm not sure he deserves credit for our happiness. But I take your point." She turned her face up to his. "Sometimes what seems like the worst moment of your life is actually the beginning of something beautiful." Quinn's eyes, still as piercingly blue as the day they'd met, held hers with a love that had only deepened with shared joys and challenges. "Like a slow-handed laundress becoming the heart of a thriving ranch and the mother of my children." "Exactly like that," Olivia agreed, reaching up to touch his bearded cheek. "And like a lonely rancher becoming the center of a woman's world." As darkness settled completely around them and the first stars appeared in the vast Colorado sky, Quinn lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that held all the tenderness of their beginning and all the passion of their present. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, the baby kicked firmly against Quinn's hand as if reminding them of the future that continued to unfold. "We should go in," Quinn murmured, though he made no move to rise from the swing. "Early day tomorrow." In a moment, Olivia replied, content to remain in this perfect pocket of time a little longer. "I'm just thinking how fortunate I am that you happened by that day, that you offered me work when I desperately needed it." "At twice the wage," Quinn reminded her with a smile. "Best investment I ever made." As the night deepened around Starlight Ranch, the house stood solid and welcoming, filled with the evidence of a life well lived and a love well nurtured. From desperate beginnings had grown a family and a legacy that would endure long after the story of the fired laundress, and the kind-hearted rancher had faded into local legend. But for Quinn and Olivia Jameson, wrapped in each other's arms on the porch of the home they had built together, the past was merely prologue. The best chapters of their story were still being written, day by day, in the life they shared.